Well, welcome in, everyone. I'm Meteorologist Thomas Patrick. Thanks for joining us on KREM 2 Plus for this exclusive weather impact alert live stream. We've got this big atmospheric river that's going to continue to give us windy conditions, warm weather, and on occasion some rain as well. All three of those weather impacts at play. We're going to cover all of that with a primary focus on today's high winds. This is not going to be unlike what we just had from Monday night. In fact, our wind speeds are looking pretty similar already as we cross past 11 a.m. this morning and into the rest of the afternoon. I think those wind speeds are only going to increase from here. So we're going to start with that focus on today's weather impact alert day, and then we'll give you more general information about the atmospheric river and any more windy days or warmer days that may be ahead. But today's focus is mainly going to be on the winds. So here you go, weather impact alert day and wind advisories. These go until 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, though the strongest winds are going to be felt in the mid of the afternoon or early evening. Really, a general time frame between noon and 9 p.m. is likely when the strongest winds will be felt. Those wind speeds, 50 to 60 miles per hour. That's going to be pretty strong for especially eastern Washington. We're already seeing wind gusts in the 50 mile per hour range. And if they'll be similar to what we had Monday night, there will be a potential for tree damage or power outages. That would be the biggest thing to be cautious for and be prepared for. I know that in the middle of the day, if you find a stray bit of debris from a tree branch that had snapped and fell on the road, you want to make sure that you're at least cautious and alerted for that. Otherwise, power outages are possible. Usually when trees fall on power lines, that tends to be the biggest issue. Of course, secure any loose objects. I mean, the simple things like basketballs and soccer balls in the front or backyard. You don't want those blown away. Same with trash cans or even trampolines. Make sure that those are bolted to the ground so that way it doesn't accidentally get picked up by the wind. So that's kind of the general gist of the high winds today. As mentioned, wind advisories is the alert from the National Weather Service. This goes until 7 a.m. There are a few spots with high wind warnings. These are the locations that are most likely going to get 60 mile per hour winds, the high end of that scale. Those areas are shaded in gold. That would be Pomeroy and Asotin in southeastern Washington. And all the Tri-Cities that just got upgraded about an hour ago. That for, again, Kennewick, Pasco, Richland, all could very well see the highest wind speeds at about 60 miles per hour. Meanwhile, for Spokane and Coeur d'Alene, Pullman and Moscow, as well as this section of central Washington, Ritzville, Harrington, Davenport, and Reardon, all going to expect wind speeds a bit closer to 50 or 55 miles per hour. That is no slouch. That is no joke. That is in that realm of strong enough to get damage and get power outages. Hopefully it will be like Monday night, where it's not going to be widespread. We're not hopefully going to see any widespread issues today. It helps that all the leaves are on the ground and off the trees, because that means it's not going to catch those stronger winds like what it would from a couple months ago. So as mentioned, it's an atmospheric river. You're going to hear that weather term a lot, not just today, but for the week ahead, this weekend, next week, because this is turning into a long duration atmospheric river event. So what it is that it's a low-level jet stream. It's basically only about 1,000, 2,000 feet above the ground, fast-moving column of air. And as it skims along the Pacific waters and comes out of the tropics, like near Hawaii, just picks up on all that moisture and warmth. And it's a quite literal conveyor belt of that warmth and moisture, and the jet stream itself provides the wind. And that's why we get all of those weather impacts wherever that lands or is pointed at for the West Coast. In this case, it's pointed right at Washington State. So hence the rain on the west side, plenty of wind today. And yes, the warm weather is all going to come with that. So that's kind of the three main weather factors, the big three W's: wet, windy, and warm. Those are atmospheric rivers every single time. Just depends on, how strong are those winds? How warm's that weather? Sometimes it's not quite so warm that even mountains will get heavy snow. In this case, it's just a lot more rain for the region. Some of the biggest impacts that we're watching even outside of the high winds is really how warm it's going to be. Temperatures are 20 degrees above average. That means 50s easily, which is actually near record high territory. Just funny enough that today's record high, as you'll see, is one of our highest record highs for the entire month. So we might not actually hit a record high today. We'll save that information for a little bit later. Also, snow levels as high as 9,000 feet is so high that even mountains don't get snow out of this. it is all rain. And that's actually a 1-2 punch between more rain and now melting snow could give us flood issues as well. So the wind is definitely our primary, most immediate concern. The warmth has this secondary effect when it comes to snow melt and what the rain does on the region. Look at these temperatures right now. It's 52 degrees at 11 a.m. on December 10th. Our average high temperature is 35 degrees. So we're already 17 degrees above that, and we're on our way to the mid 50s today. As for wind speeds, sustained winds are 24 miles per hour. The gusts are double that, 48. A wind gust is a 3-second burst of wind. That is what's measured into the highest wind speeds. That's what we're being the most cautious for, because these are going to be in that 48, 50, up to 60 miles per hour for today. At that wind speed, all it takes is a 3-second burst of wind to knock down tree branches, or it could actually topple full trees over. That's going to be rare, but it is possible. We actually had a coworker in the building that was the site of some damage from Monday night. Just one of his trees randomly decided to completely uproot. It fell on his fence. Obviously, a huge bummer there. If that falls on a power line, then we get power outages in the region. And it's all because of the wind gusts. The sustained wind speeds, annoying at the base level, but it's these wind gusts that are going to be kind of the most threatening part of today's forecast. We've had a maximum wind speed just one above that, 49 miles per hour in Spokane, already 51 miles per hour in the Palouse at Pullman. The fastest wind speeds are going to be not only eastern Washington, but as you saw, the high wind warnings are actually for southern Washington. They're not quite there yet out of Richland, just a wind speed 39 miles per hour. So it really is getting started early for eastern Washington at the moment. So these are the maximum wind speeds even just today by 11 a.m. We still have half of the event to go, and I do think our wind speeds increase this afternoon and this evening. So here's what it looks like on our computer modeling. It'll use that same color palette where the purple shades should be 45 miles per hour and stronger. And you see that not only in southern Washington, but right through the core of the inland Northwest. The only exceptions to this for our region would be northern Washington. And that's the mountains helping to really shelter you and protect you from these west to east winds. Because with a westerly wind, well, all these mountain ranges are oriented north to south. So it actually just stops a lot of that wind from getting too strong. It ends up being the other way around. When there's northerly winds, we end up seeing Omak and the Okanagan Valley gets those winds the fastest. In this case, with just a straight west to east wind, it's the Columbia Basin, it's eastern Washington. In this case, it actually gives North Idaho actually quite a bit of wind speed as well. It's the afternoon here is when I think our wind speeds are going to be at the fastest, 40 to 60 miles per hour. I always like to put the information on the left side of the screen because sometimes the colors get a little bit lost on us. As for tomorrow, those wind advisories go until 7 a.m. Here's 8 a.m. and there's still a bit of wind here. There's a little bit of purple on the map for the Palouse and the Tri-Cities. However, things will be calming down pretty fast on Thursday. Watch as we go from 8 a.m. to the rest of the day and everything just kind of settles down here. So today is easily the worst of it. I'm actually not going to go an alert day or alert mode for tomorrow morning. 7 a.m. is just kind of a simple time frame for the National Weather Service to use as a cutoff time for those wind advisories. I think the worst of the wind will be easily finished by then. It's really a today and tonight issue more than it is going to be for tomorrow morning. So you saw it there. Again, most of eastern Washington definitely going to get some strong winds. So that's the focus for today, of course. Wind speeds up to 60 miles per hour. The atmospheric river, though, brings us wind, warmth, and rain. The rain actually isn't too bad for today. I'm not looking at any big events of rain for the next couple days here. So that gives us kind of one less thing to worry about too much. But there are secondary factors that the rain's going to have on the region. So here's our satellite and radar. Big comparison, first of all, is that the rain's going to be more constant on the west side and west of the Cascades than it will be for our region. Though what you are seeing here is basically the mountains helping to squeeze out any moisture in the air as if you were wringing out a sponge of water. What's happening is that it's not a storm itself, it's just a constant feed of moisture. So that's why you see rain on the west side and the Cascades will give that first ring of that sponge, and there will be plenty of rain for the mountains. Then we have a rain shadow effect. Basically, the rain on the other side of the mountains, the leeward side, ends up being quite dry. So we're not going to get too much rain over central Washington. But as that air starts to rise and pick up again into the inner Mountain West, Idaho and Montana primarily, then we see a next surge in. So there's not as much rain to wring out of that sponge a second give, but there is some, and that's why we're seeing some rain here. In this case, there's a little moisture boundary that's near Spokane, so we are seeing kind of the rain finger back into eastern Washington, and we got to continue to account for that today. So this is about 11:25 a.m. as we are broadcasting live on KREM 2+. It's a very showery, misty day over Coeur d'Alene, but this is not a heavy rain at all. This is pretty light. So I'm not expecting there to be any significant amount of rain in the rain gauges, just enough to keep everything damp and wet outside. I think once you get to 4th of July Pass, which is basically right where the I-90 marker is, and then east from there through the Silver Valley, Lookout Pass, you're just gonna run into that constant mist and rain, even just spray from, the cars in front of you along I-90. It's just going to look pretty wet in that region in particular. Kind of the same to the north. Looks like Sandpoint and Bonners Ferry, Highway 2 in this region. Looks fairly wet, just kind of a more moderate to light rainfall. It's going to ebb and flow. Nothing that really stands out as heavy in this case, but more than enough to keep things wet and damp outside. And as mentioned, there's like this boundary. I usually would call this a moisture boundary, which is just kind of an invisible layer where the moisture can collect. And if it gets to a breaking point, it'll start raining. And that's kind of what we've just seen here. It's not a ton of rain, but it is enough to kind of form this discrete line, basically right along Highway 2. You can extend this from Post Falls, through the valley, Spokane, out towards Airway Heights, Reardon, Davenport. That's just where it is right now. Looks like it ever so is drifting northward, very subtly, but our models actually picked up on this. So good job on our models for initializing correctly on the rain. And just note that this is all light, enough to keep everything just damp outside. You have to use the windshield wipers, but it's not gonna cause any kind of flooding, not in our region for sure. This is very, very light rain. It's really the wind that's gonna make it more annoying than anything else. So no urban flooding. I should probably be more accurate about saying. River and stream flooding in the mountains could be a different story though. So what we have here are flood alerts for a portion of western Montana, North Idaho, and then the Cascades and westward. Seattle's kind of a different case here because of that constant rainfall, and they're going to get plenty of rain from, recently, today, the next couple days, all that, and then fueled by any snow melt is going to make this region of the Pacific Northwest likely flood a bit more easily. In fact, all these more lime, bright green shaded squares and polygons, as we call them, those are the flood warnings. That's active flooding that's ongoing right now. For most of that, those are rivers that are above their flood banks and above their banks, so there's going to be some flooding along the sides of the river in areas where it's not supposed to be that watery. Meanwhile, it's possible in our neck of the woods, but we're still in the watch stage, meaning that the ingredients are there and it is a potential. At the moment, there's no active flooding, so that's why we don't have any advisories or warnings that are active. So all these green shades, which does include for Kootenai County, Latah County, as well as Shoshone County, or should I say Benewell County, those are flood watches, but have not had any reports of active flooding. Nonetheless, any rain that we get, plus melting snow melt, that's a big factor here, means that our rivers, our creeks, our streams are going to run high. Looks like the Coeur d'Alene River was running very high today, but it's not over its flood banks at the moment. So if you live in a flood-prone area, if you're very close to a river that often does flood, usually in the springtime, you'll want to be cautious about how high those water levels are. Otherwise, for the rest of us, again, urban flooding, not an issue. Like storm drains are not going to overflow with the kind of rain that we're getting. It's just the snow melt that's a big issue here. The secondary issue of that same factor is avalanche warning. So that's all the blue shaded areas here. I don't specifically put the cities because the cities are not going to get affected by avalanches. The mountains are going to get affected by avalanches. Because we have a snow base, but it's melting and now we're getting rain on top of it, it's just unstable. Basically, it's just top heavy. And those avalanches are very dangerous. So for those that enjoy backcountry skiing, this is not a time to be doing that. Also outdoor recreational camping enthusiasts, you'll want to avoid the outdoors today and this weekend because there is a high avalanche danger. because we're getting so much snow melt and the rain on top of it, this is just outright dangerous. So if you have camping plans or skiing plans for backcountry areas or out of bounds areas, do not do that. That would be very, very dangerous. So that's the Selkirk Mountains, that's the Cabinet Mountains, as well as those in northeastern Montana. Again, a lot of backcountry mountains in this region, but it is dangerous right now because of the high avalanche danger. I noticed that the Silver Valley was not under the avalanche warning, but the Avalanche Center in Idaho actually still lists those mountains as high avalanche danger, especially above 5,000 feet. So I would still be very, very, very extra careful. So if you are planning to try to go skiing or snowboarding this weekend, do check those mountain conditions and realize that it might be a little bit more dangerous than you can reckon for it. If you're an expert and you know how to handle that appropriately, you're obviously more equipped than most. For me, that's just something that I would probably avoid. The big reason, again, is our snow levels are so high. Right now, it's about 8,000 to 9,000 feet high. And our mountains really only go to about 6,000 feet. Silver Mountain's like 6,300, Schweitzer is 6,400, and Mount Spokane, which is opening on Friday, less than 6,000 feet of elevation. It's snowing at 9,000 feet and above, and it's all rain below that. And for December, that's very, very rare. So realize that there's a lot of that runoff already. The snow is melting. There's rain falling on top of that. It's dangerous for avalanche concerns. And then we have the river flooding issues because, in spring, our rivers and our falls tend to get, flow very fast because of all the rain and the snow melt. We're just having the same issue, but it's exacerbated by the rain that's falling in the middle of December. So that's where we're at in terms of snow elevations. The one saving grace here is our rain is not prolific. It's not going to be tremendous for our region. This is more just a light rain that's just going to exacerbate that snow melt, if anything else, for our mountains. Here's how our modeling handles the rain today. Here's 3 p.m. It kind of did find that sliver, that moisture boundary that I mentioned that's over Spokane right now. Kind of moves it into Deer Park, Newport, and into our northern areas here. So I do think a light rain, that mist, that drizzle will continue north of Spokane and Coeur d'Alene this afternoon. Same with the Silver Valley. Otherwise, I just see a lot of mountain rainfall, which, by the way, there's no bits of blue at all in North Idaho. And our model does pick it out. If there's going to be snow in the mountains, it'll plot blue in the mountains. But our snow levels are so high, it's rain at those elevations. You got to actually look towards the Cascades. There's a little bit towards the North Cascades region, maybe just right near the Canadian border, still getting snow. And if you look super, super closely, I'm going to point it out. See this pink pixel right here? That's Mount Rainier. Mount Rainier stands, I think, 14,000 feet tall. One of the few mountains in even the Cascades that's actually getting snow at the very tippy top, the peak. But again, at 9,000, 8,000 feet and below, it's actually all rain and snow melt. So it is still looking pretty messy, even in the Cascades region as well. By the way, here's 11 o'clock tonight. Still, again, that light rain for our northern areas. This is just going to linger and meander around. We kind of have this like cold front, warm front stationary boundary that's been dropping through and then lifting north, and now it will drop back southward. I think we'll have a focus of some rainfall for Thursday morning. This is 8 a.m. Looks like a little sliver of rain kind of in the core of the inland northwest, a bit towards the Palouse. We'll see how this pans out. I think our similar regions in eastern Washington and certainly all of North Idaho have at least a good chance to pick up a little bit of rain tomorrow morning, but it's not going to last all day. In fact, that cold front at that stage should finally dip down far enough south that it actually clears out a lot of the rain in the region. It will help to kind of shift the wind direction, and that's why Thursday's winds will not nearly be as strong as what we experienced today. So again, today's winds 50, 60 miles per hour. As things get rearranged for tomorrow's weather pattern, it'll still be mild, but I think the weather pattern will calm pretty significantly. Okay, on the temperature side of the scale, this is kind of a weird positive maybe for the region. Unless you're like a winter weather lover, then you don't want to see this weather. But this is very, very warm for the season, no matter how you look at it. 56 degrees will be the high temperature today. Again, it's 52 already as of 11 a.m. 54 in Coeur d'Alene, 59 in Pullman, so almost 60 degrees. And there will be 60s in far southeastern Washington. You see 62 Lewiston, 64 Pomeroy, 67 in the Tri-Cities. 67 degrees in the month of December is something that I never thought I would see even anywhere in Washington state. This is super warm overall. Plug that into our almanac, and you're going to see a record high of 60. So not quite a record high. That's a special record. That's actually the all-time December record, which was set in 1939. I think what's even more fascinating here is the low temperature of 49 degrees is 15 degrees above the average high. 34. 34 is what it's supposed to be kind of on each and every day, or at least hovering around that point. We are soaring way above that, more than 20 degrees above the mark. So I think we're in the realm of record highs. If not Spokane, some regions are going to get their records broken for today. If not, could actually be tomorrow as well. So here's the next 2 days. So 60, again, I mentioned a special record because that's the all-time December record set in 1939. Tomorrow, the record high is 56. My forecast is 54. So it's still close, and honestly, with a calmer forecast, could have a better chance to hit tomorrow's record high just because that record isn't as astronomically high for December standards. Most of our records are like low to mid 50s day after day. 60 really stands out. By the way, if we hit 60 degrees, it'll only be the second time. It is the one and only time Spokane has ever hit 60 degrees in the month of December. And we kind of have this outside chance to do it today, though I think because of the rain, it is a little bit unlucky. I think if we had a slightly drier forecast, we might have had a different story. We'll go back into the atmospheric river. So I'll show you a lot of big picture elements here. And this will give us a scope of why things and why the weather is the way it is this week, because this is a super unusual forecast. If you just look at the 7-day, and honestly, if you're probably looking at the app on your phone and you're seeing 50, 50, 50, where's December? Well, the atmospheric river is having all the say on our weather pattern. It's this moisture feed. You see it way in the water vapor imagery. This is all cloud cover as well. Looks like it's raining right over, Washington, Oregon, and into the Intermountain West. The thing is, if you follow this all the way back, that's Hawaii. This storm is taking the air and the moisture out of Hawaii, skimming it along the Pacific Ocean, and then depositing it right over the Pacific Northwest. It does get modified, so that's why our temperatures aren't 70s or 80s, because as it travels north, yes, those temperatures do cool a bit. But the origin point of an air mass matters. And in this case, it is a tropical Pacific waters, and that's why it's as warm and windy and as wet as it could be. Honestly, the rain isn't too bad, but the wind and the air being as warm as it is definitely is because it's drawing from those Hawaiian waters, right? And again, it's depositing it right over the Pacific Northwest. Atmospheric rivers can aim anywhere up and down the West Coast, so when it's aimed at Washington, it's just our turn. As we take a deeper dive, kind of a 3D look at atmospheric rivers, you kind of see the water and the air. Again, when I say it skims along the water, that's why it draws the moisture out of the ocean and puts it in the air as cloud cover, of course. And once it reaches land, that's where the heavy rain ends up being. That's why Seattle and Portland is always way wetter on the west side, because they just get just kind of straight from the tap in terms of the river. Now it goes over the Cascades, super tall mountains. Sometimes we get snow at higher elevations. This is a weird case where it is so warm, snow levels have climbed above the mountain level. So actually there's not really much snow for the Cascades. In this case, it's all rain. And that's why there's flooding and avalanche danger, not just for the Cascades, but for Idaho and Montana. Now, when we get to our neck of the woods, I kind of mentioned this before. This is why North Idaho is also getting rain, because as the air climbs, it kind of squeezes that sponge again. But this is now the second squeeze of the sponge. There will only be a fraction of the rain for the inland Northwest compared to those on the west side, usually by quite a degree as well. And in this case, it's even more pronounced because the rain hasn't been too impressive today, nor will it be through Friday or Saturday. I actually take our forecast rainfall through Saturday. It's definitely looking a lot less now for the west side than it did before in previous model runs. Half an inch, 1 inch of rain. That's wet, but it's manageable for Seattle and Olympia. Our modeling says 0.0. It actually just rounds down because we're going to get less than 1/10 of an inch of rain. And that's the next Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 4 days combined. So we don't have a ton of rain on the way. Maybe 1/10 of an inch, maybe 2/10 of an inch. This does not look too bad overall. It's the mountains that will really squeeze out, like a sponge, quite literally squeezing out the rain as much as possible over the mountains themselves. And our pattern is going to stay this way. I mentioned a long-term atmospheric river event is underway. Well, while there are some small wiggles and small variations in the long-term forecast, like for example, this is on Monday, there's like a little dip in the jet stream here with another wave of rain. It looks like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday of next week could be very, very rainy, at least one or two of those days. That'll be the next storm that passes through our region. But the jet stream is kind of still generally in the same shape. Again, it's originating out of Hawaii. It's pulling that moisture out and aiming it at the Pacific Northwest. This is next Wednesday, a week from today. We're kind of still under the influence of that same pattern. Now, the modeling here does go a little colder for the mountains, like lowering the snow levels, but the forecast for Spokane stayed mostly the same. Maybe not as insanely warm as today, but near 50 degrees is still the forecast for the next week straight here. This is next week's outlook, and the trend is so warm. Like we would call this, the signal is so warm that I think our temperatures are likely staying, if not in the 50s, near 50 degrees. And that's not just for 1 or 2 days. That could be all of next week as well. I mean, think about it. The end of next week is the 19th. That's the week before Christmas. We're not going to get any rain, or we're not going to get any snow the week before Christmas. If we're going to want a white Christmas, we need the following week to absolutely change pattern and change course here. You put this side by side. Here's the temperature trend way on the warm end of the scale. Here's the precipitation trend way on the wet side of the scale. That's an atmospheric river, warmer and wetter. And again, on occasion, we'll have some windy days. So here's what the 7-day forecast looks like. As mentioned, today's focus is all on the wind. That's why we have our weather impact alert day. I'll say this, as far as today's forecast, I have not seen any more high wind days. That could change based on kind of how that next storm comes in, like Wednesday, Thursday is kind of around the realm of that next big push of rain. Maybe we get a windy day out of that, but that was a little too far away to tell wind speeds in particular. But the rain signals look pretty well. Honestly, the takeaway on the 7-day forecast is how warm this is. Remember that average high, 34 degrees? Yeah, we are nowhere close to that. We're like 20 degrees above it. 50 to 56 degrees all 7 days. And it actually looks like next week could just stay right around 50 degrees, depending on how long this atmospheric river wants to stick around. I will say we have kind of drier days upcoming here. Not a ton of rain today, more like light showers. Thursday and Friday, like Thursday morning's probably our next best chance for some light rain, but Friday and Saturday did not look like big rain chances. It's really Sunday, Monday, Tuesday was the next part of the storm system. So to recap things up, because it's 11:45 a.m. right now, we are less than 15 minutes away from our KREM 2 News at noon. To wrap things up, we have a weather impact alert day today for high winds. Yes, it is a warm day at the same time, but the alert is for the winds, of course. Wind speeds 50 to 60 miles per hour outside today. They will be at their fastest this afternoon and evening. And at 60 miles per hour, wind damage and power outages are possible. So we'll be monitoring that all afternoon long. Those wind advisories do go until 7 a.m. Thursday morning, though Thursday we'll see those winds calm down pretty quickly after the morning and into the day. So I think Thursday should be a bit calmer once we get past 7 a.m. For the meantime, just stay vigilant, stay safe, just mind any bits of debris or tree branches that might fall onto the road because it's all possible. And of course, if you get any power outages, make sure to report that, pass that along, and hopefully we don't see anything that will be too devastating or widespread in the region. Wind advisories today until 7 a.m. for wind gusts at 50 to 60 miles per hour. I'm Meteorologist Thomas Patrick. Thank you very much for joining us on this extended KREM 2 Plus live stream for this Weather Impact Alert Day. Stay safe, everybody, and we will see you shortly at KREM 2 News at noon.